On this episode of Talk Sign Up, Allison Bickle will be talking with the guys from Vacation Races about how they are handling this new territory of reopening races under social distancing guidelines. If anyone watching here is a race director, then head on over to runsignup.com/lookingforward. Here you can find our race guidelines document. This living document was originally created by RunSignup with input and suggestions from dozens of race organizers and industry leaders. It will continue to be updated regularly as new information becomes available and can be adapted and modified by any organization to meet their needs and comply with their state and local health guidance. Again, that can be found at runsignup.com/lookingforward, and we'll put a link to that below the video here. Now throwing it over to Allison.
We are super happy to be here with the team from Vacation Races today. They are going to be talking about how they managed to hold and produce the Bryce Canyon Ultras and Zion at Night. It's part of our series of documenting and understanding how different leaders in our industry are actually making it work with permitting and producing socially distanced races.
What's up, everybody?
The running community is made up of tens of thousands of these micro communities, and all these micro communities interact, and so we thought there were opportunities in this market to build some cool technology.
Real quick before we get into their conversation, I just want to give a little background information on Vacation Races. Vacation Races was founded in 2012 with 3 races. They now host 20 plus premium races in some of the most beautiful places in the world. Their mission is to help people get outside and gain a greater appreciation for our amazing national parks, and you can check them out at vacationraces.com. Today they're going to be talking about their Bryce Canyon Ultra, which had over 500 participants, even with all the new social distancing guidelines in place. Plus we'll be talking about their Zion at Night race, which had over 800 participants, which is very impressive considering they came up with the idea for the race and put it all together during the pandemic. Plus they only had registration open for about 3 weeks before the race actually happened. So let's watch.
What we ended up doing at the end of April, we sent out a big survey. Actually, it wasn't that big of a survey, but the response was really big. We had over 7,000 people responded to it. But the intent of the survey was trying to figure out what people were worried about. And that kind of informed a lot of our decisions that we've been making in May and June. So what we found, travel wasn't necessarily the issue. Flights, a lot of people worried about flying, especially international, but even domestically. Traveling overnight is not that big of a deal. It's about 11% of people were like, yeah, traveling overnight, they're uncomfortable with. Group size, under 100, groups of less than 100, most people were feeling okay about. But once you hit that 100 mark, people started getting comfortable, or at least said they were. People are weirded out about shuttles, so that's a big hurdle that we're having to kind of struggle with. And the thing that really surprised me is when we asked about, how much the financial situation's changed. And of course, this was end of April, so I don't know if it's changed more, but we gave people 4 options. So they have to cut back a lot on travel and race entries, have to cut back a little, financial situation hasn't changed much, or for one reason or another, they have even more money to spend on travel and racing. And what we found was 4% said they were in a better position, 54% said that their financial situation hadn't changed much, 27% said that they would have to cut back a little, and only 14.5% said they'd have to cut back a lot. And that's really the data that surprised me the most. I think there are still people out there who have hobbies. A lot of people have been able to transition to work from home, and they still got money, and they still love the sport, and they still love running as a hobby. They just aren't comfortable with some other aspects of it. So the way we kind of approached things was, our job as race directors really hasn't changed. There's always state guidelines and regulations, and permitting agencies require certain things, and our customers have certain expectations that they need. Those have changed, but trying to marry the two, trying to hold an event that satisfies all the customers' wants and needs while staying in line with the requirements the states ask you to abide by, trying to come up with some formula that works and allows both of those two parties to be happy is really the trick. And that was true before the pandemic. It'll be true after the pandemic. It's kind of a new situation for all of us. So that's kind of the framework that we were looking at. Shuttles are a big deal. So trying to find loop courses is critical, I think. Keeping group sizes small and trying to hold races in locations that people can get to relatively easy without having to get too far away from home.
For Bryce, kind of leading into what Salem said, when we were trying to make a decision on what we want to do for Bryce, we really rely really heavily on the local permitting agencies and the local community, because we don't want to do anything that is going to be skewed as intrusive or unwelcome. You know what I mean? Like, we want to make sure that we're being good neighbors, and that we're not bringing an event there that's not welcome there. Because ideally, you know, the big picture for us is we want to make sure that this is an event that we can continue to do for years, that the community embraces, and that runners enjoy. The nice thing for Bryce is we have 5 distances. We have a 100-miler, a 50-mile, a 60K, a 50K, and a 30K. So it was really easy for us for that particular event to just spread everybody out for each distance. And to do so, we gave an hour window for each distance. So for the 100-milers, they had from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. to cross the starting mat. If they were towing the line, going for overall awards, and we told them to make sure they were there right at 5, lining up at 5, and their, you know, overall results would be based off of gun time. Everybody else would be based off of chip time. That was kind of how we dealt with the spreading everybody out issue. I actually had a radio tuner that we had set up, so when I make announcements, everybody could just turn their car radios to the radio station, and when I'd make announcements, they could hear it from their car radio, so they could make their way from their car over to the starting line for each of those distances too. So it made it a little less congregated at the start.
And I think they call it a transmitter, right?
Yeah, it's an FM transmitter. So if you've ever gone like and seen Christmas lights, and someone's got their lights tuned to a radio, and they're like, hey, tune into this station, it's the same idea, same technology. It's basically just a little FM transmitter, like Lyle said. You plug it into your sound system, and then you plug it into a little antenna, and it broadcasts the signal to whatever FM station you dial it into.
I had to make sure that it didn't conflict with any radio stations in the area first, and then you just tell everybody to tune into that on their car radios, and then any announcements you make will be broadcast over that. And he said it had about like a 2-mile radius, which was great for our staging area. It did really work really well. So, and then same with the finish line. Everybody, we asked everybody when they finished to not congregate, and everybody was very respectful of that. They finished, their family, you know, and friends came and cheered them on, and I never saw any groupings very big there. Probably I never even saw any more than probably 15 people congregated around the finish line, which is great. It went exactly how we wanted it to go. And when I approached the Forest Service and the county about doing the race, that was their first question to me was, well, do you think you can operate this event and still maintain, you know, the social distancing and everything that we have in place? And I said, yeah, I think we can. I mean, we'll obviously have to change some things, but I really don't see any reason why we can't do that. And so they were like, well, if you're confident you can, then we don't have any issues. We think you should do the event, which was actually kind of the push in that direction that I needed, because until that point, we'd just been canceling races. And this was the first one that we were like, nope, we're going to do this one because they were so supportive of us doing it. And so kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, I think it makes a really big difference to be in close communication with your permitting agencies and be very open and communicate with them very freely, because that's going to help a lot.
In Utah, the requirement was no congregating larger than groups of 50. So we did it at night, and we staggered. So it was a half marathon trail run. And so we said every runner who signed up from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., they sign up and they pick a time slot. And each time slot only had 50 spots available. So people could pick a time spot, 7 p.m., 9 p.m., midnight, 2 in the morning. We implemented a lot of the same things that Lyle did at Bryce. What we found was that runners, let's say if you signed up for a 7 p.m. start time, we encouraged them to get there no earlier than 30 minutes before their start time. And we left the start line open. We had a rolling start until about 30 minutes after. And so it was really just a trickle of people. You know, you obviously see a bump right at about 7. But there was a few people that we let start early, and then there was people that we'd have starting up until about 7:20, 20 minutes after the hour. So that hour window before and after the actual start time really helped spread people out, and we never had people congregating more than 20 or 30. In fact, in hindsight, we look at it, we probably could have done 50 every half hour and done 100 people an hour, and still easily been compliant and being able to practice social distancing. And
yeah, we got the open rolling start. We saw that we had lots of people comment that at Bryce as well. It takes the pressure off having to use the bathroom before the gun goes off, takes pressure off having to park on time. So I think in the future, we'll say the elite start is at, you know, X o'clock, but the starting line is open for the next 45 minutes or whatever. And I think that'll take the edge off a lot of people. And so if you want that big group, gun, you know, countdown, gun goes off, you can get it, or if you just want a little bit more relaxed atmosphere, you can do it.
I think the rolling start, it was great. The Bryce race and the Zion race were both trail runs. And so I think also there's something to that. You don't want a big mass start on a trail run anyway. And so this rolling start and staggered start was an easy way to, I think it was really enjoyable and desirable for runners. So again, there's still something to have, to be said for that, the way your adrenaline gets pumping with your shoulder to shoulder with a lot of people. But for these two races specifically, I think it worked out really well to stagger and to have a rolling, more relaxed start line.
Dean, if you could explain Zion at Night, the whole concept of the race, and then what you did to make it happen.
Sure. Bryce Canyon Ultras was one of our normal races, right? It was in our calendar. And once we got the go-ahead from permitting agencies and realized we could make that happen, we started looking at a couple months that we had cleared up because we had to cancel events, and we're like, what could we fill in this time? Can we offer something new for our runners to come do and participate in? Zion is the backyard for most of our team. We knew the area really well, and we had good relationships with the permitting agencies, and so we thought we could pull a race together really quick, and we did, but it ended up being not as quick as we thought. And so the weather in St. George or southern Utah gets exponentially hotter at this time of year. So days made the difference between doing a day event and then it being too hot to do an event during the day. One of our permitting agencies was BLM, and they took a little longer because they wanted to approve it, but it wasn't something they felt a decision they could make on the local level. It had to go to, I think, Washington, D.C., it's a federal agency, and so they had to kind of push it up the chain. So it took a little bit longer, and so those few weeks made the difference where it was going to be too hot to do the event. And also the BLM wanted to permit it, but they were concerned about the overcrowding on trails already. In Utah, they've been pretty open throughout all of this. And so a lot of people had been flocking to Utah and are recreating down there. And so the BLM was concerned about congestion on the trails. And Lyle actually suggested, he's like, well, what if we did it during the night instead of during the day? Would the BLM be more comfortable with that? So we suggested that to the BLM, and they thought it was great. We explained to them.
Running in at night in the desert is amazing. That's something that, like, outside in the desert at night is really stunning. And so when we had that idea, it was like, oh, this is even better.
Yeah, it just so happened that it was going to be compliant, and it was also going to be spectacular. It wasn't like a concession. We're like, oh no, this will be great. It'll be a lot of fun. People are going to love this. There were people who ran at 8 p.m. and they got to see the sunset, and then they got to see the moonrise. And then there were people who ran, at 4 a.m. and they got to see the moon, and then they got to see sunrise. Like, it was a really, really special experience for a lot of runners.
The other thing that I think was interesting, because we had it every hour at night, we had a lot more people sign up at midnight than we did at 11. And we don't totally know why, but we just think there's something about being able to say you started at midnight. There were some weird, interesting registration patterns that we saw, and that was fun for me.
Somebody asked if you can talk about the scavenger hunt at Zion. And also there's feedback from their friend who loved your race. Item of note, this was the first time she was sad to see the finish line as she didn't want it to end.
That's awesome. I don't want to toot our own horn, but it was really special. Like, it was a full moon. It's the desert outside Zion. Like, it was awesome.
And I will say the full moon was intentional. Like, we had talked about maybe doing it this next weekend, and we were just like, no, let's get in there because it's a full moon that weekend. It's gonna be awesome.
Like, you had the whole thing to yourself. It was like somebody had gone out and set up like support just for you. Like, there were people that were on that trail that didn't see another soul the entire time because their pace was just fast enough that nobody ever caught them, but they never caught the person that started in front of them. So it was pretty cool. So the Zion Explorer Cup, I don't know how relevant that'll be to a lot of race directors, but at our races, we pair them with the national parks. And so we want people to have a really positive experience in the park, and we kind of feel like the race it's kind of like the launch pad or the gateway to more exploration of a place a lot of people have never been before in these places that we love. And so we've always tried to incentivize people to enjoy the park by offering activities. Like, we used to have club hikes. So, if you finish the race, I think the first one Salem ever did was Angels Landing, right? It was like the Angels Club. If you finish the race and hike Angels Landing, which is an iconic hike in Zion National Park, within 72 hours of finishing your race, and take a photo up there with your bib and your finisher medal and send it to us, then you would get something. It used to be 50% off a future race, and then we made like these little survey marker medallions that we'd give people. So So that's the thing we've done. And then at this race, we wanted to experiment with something new, which is basically just a scavenger hunt, like a whole list of activities and things they can do in the park, outside the park, our favorite restaurants, things like that. So it's just kind of a way to promote the local community, local businesses, and then also activities in the park. And then if you get a minimum number of points, right, each activity is worth points, then you get a little wooden badge. So it's just like a little extra. It's an add-on, right? It's a little extra to your race experience. And so we might substitute. Yeah, there's an example of one of the things that we made.
Could you guys explain how your aid stations typically work for your races, and then what modifications you made?
So it's different for our ultras and our half marathons, the way our aid stations set up. For the ultras, typically we'll have aid stations set up every 5 to 7 miles along the course. Historically, we'll cook up things like bacon and quesadillas and burritos and sandwiches and fresh cut up fruit and all, just basically just a smorgasbord of stuff that they can pick from. And so like this year, we had to obviously adjust that. We went with a pre-packaged kind of grab and go type setup at the aid stations to kind of facilitate a more sterile and clean aid station atmosphere. And we had things like fruit cups, and we had uncrustable sandwiches, and we had cup of noodles, and then we just had granola bars, trail mix, gels, soda, and then our water and our electrolyte drinks and all that good stuff. We had a fair amount of stuff for them to pick from.
We did get a little bit of some commentary from people regarding not having fresh food at the aid stations. They'd always qualify it by like, you guys did exactly what you said you were going to do, but not having fresh food affected them a little bit more.
I think in general it went really well. We really instructed the runners to utilize their drop bags as much as possible, which they did, which was great. We didn't do an expo for the race. What we did was we did a drive up bib pickup service, which worked really well. We just had a big field that everybody pulled into. We did a big loop and they could pull up, and we actually split the cars so that they were going on both sides of our bib pickup tent. We just handed them their bibs, and then as they were leaving the field, they could drop off their drop bags.
We separated every drop bag by like distance and location that they were going to. So we didn't have to like handle them ourselves. We kind of just roll up the tarp and move it. So it was really hands-free.
The idea was just try and keep everybody in their cars the day before so everybody wasn't getting out and congregating. And I jumped on the sound system several times during the day just to kind of give updates on what, the weather conditions and all that stuff that they could expect the next day, and just make sure to remind them to hydrate really well, and just your typical pre-race announcements and stuff. And
we always limit to one pacer on course at a time. You can utilize multiple pacers during the race, but you can only have one at a time with you. But the other major thing is we limit it to one crew member. So they're only allowed to have one crew member at every at the crew aid stations.
And the way we controlled that was we printed off one pacer bib for each runner, and we also printed off one crew bib for each runner. And so they got one of each, and the aid stations, there was only one crew member that was allowed out of the car at the aid station, and then obviously only one pacer's allowed on the trail with them at one time. And whoever's that crew or that pacer, they had to be wearing that bib when they were out of their vehicle. So I didn't feel like anybody was trying to push the issue on any of the rules and guidelines that we gave everybody. Everybody was very respectful to the rules, the congregating rules and everything. The way we separated everybody at the start was really nice.
It worked well. It was good. It was a good system, and it was well received.
Let's hear about Zion at night.
We didn't have an expo. We just had the bid pickup, but we did have our merchandise tent there set up selling merchandise, and we operated that just like you would any grocery store or retail store, right? Like there was directional arrows telling them which way to go through. We encouraged people to stay 6 feet apart. Our staff were wearing face masks. We had hand sanitizer. We did notice that hand sanitizer at the toilets got used a lot more than normal, which is a little discouraging because guys, you should be using hand sanitizer every time you use the bathroom on course, not just during pandemic. So we did that. Bid pickup was the same. We had our crew wear face masks, and we didn't do a drive-through pickup because we only had 50 every hour. We just did bid pickup right there at the start line. We had one check-in table, and bibs were pre-assigned. We had the bibs on the table and the shirts behind us. You grab their bib, grab their shirt, and then if we had to make reassignments, then we just do a pen and paper manual, and then we just make those changes. It was through the night. There's a lot of slow moments where we could kind of get caught up on things like that. It's not like our typical half marathon, right, where it's just a sprint. You're like, things start, and then before you know it, it's all over, and then you're cleaning everything up. We had time, which was good. It helped us, work out some of those kinds of things. Like Lyle said, everybody was very respectful of what we asked of them, right? They were just pleased to be out there. They were so happy to be in an event. And the one thing that was interesting with design at night was we knew we could put on a good race and it'd be a really wonderful experience, but people are so happy with the event. There's interest, whether, COVID or not, like it's a thing. The format of it, people really enjoyed. They enjoyed the night race. They enjoyed the staggered start. There are people who got like their own individual race pretty much, you know what I mean? Like they had a personal, someone give them the rundown of the course before they started, and then they had someone greeting them at the finish line. Obviously, you got to do away with a lot of the pomp and circumstance, right? We didn't have an announcer at the finish line constantly ringing them in. We had to make changes, and some of those were sacrifices or compromises, but some of those changes are actually improvements. And so I think it's important when figuring out how to put these races on, paying attention to the things that not only work well under the circumstances, but work really well and might be worth adopting under any circumstance.
We kind of been tinkering around with some hands-free water filling where we actually utilized a foot pedal that the runners could step on to refill their water bottles and stuff. We use something that's called a Ultra Spout on all of our coolers. We don't have volunteers filling cups and cleaning up cups and all that stuff. It's just all hands-free. And so the idea with the Ultra Spout is it's a one-hand single action. You're not having to hold your cup underneath there and then use your other hand to push the button in to dispense water. It's just you just hit it. It's a high flow valve, so it fills your container really fast, and then you just keep on moving. So it really flows really well at our half marathons. But the drawback to it though is like everybody's hands obviously touching it.
The flap is kind of close to the nozzle, so so a lot of times when people go to push the flap, their handle it can brush a nozzle.
And so we're like, okay, so that's a contamination point that we need to address. And so Dane was actually the one that came up with the idea. He's like, what if we got like, those drum kick pedals? If you get one of those drum kick pedals, could we rig one of those up in such a way? And my son's a drummer, so I just happened to have a kick pedal at my house. So I was like, yeah, I think I can make this work. So I went and tinkered with it a little bit and rigged up a chain connected to the little valve. So when you stepped on it, it pulled the little flap back and dispensed the water. So you could just walk up to it, step on the foot pedal, hold your thing underneath of it. It fills your bottle, container, whatever you're using, and then you just go on your merry way.
And I'll say the foot pedals themselves, it's the concept is good. Somebody's got it. A better engineer's got to like really figure it out.
There was just some issues. We didn't have them staked down to the ground or anything like that. And so I think if we just stake them down, then the pedals don't move around as much. And then the other thing is you kind of have to offset the pedal. You can't put it right underneath of the valve or else you're going to get your foot covered in water. So you got to kind of offset the pedal to one side or the other. So as you step on it, it's not just dumping water right on your foot.
If somebody out there can make a better one, patent it and sell it, we'll buy them. Or you give them to us free and we won't charge royalties.
We are your customer for sure.
We rigged that up before Bryce. So then at Design at Night race, we have these big water containers. They're called Water Monster. The company's called Water Monster. They actually are the ones that bought the rights to the Ultra Spouts now. So you can actually buy the Ultra Spouts from Water Monster. So we have 250 gallons of water at each of the aid stations. And so because of that, we really had very small volunteer needs at the aid stations. They essentially just kind of ran themselves.
We just kind of gave everybody specific instructions about where the trash cans were. Don't litter and behave yourselves because they're unsupervised aid stations.
Me and another staff member, we just kind of patrolled the course throughout the night and just checked, the coolers periodically, make sure that they were still good, and then make sure that we still had honey stinger gels on the tables, and that's it.
Did you guys have a competitive aspect with awards, either age group or overall finishers? And then also at the finish line, did you hand out medals or any sort of food or beverage? And how did you handle that?
So for Bryce, we give them the option. We have medals and we have some mugs that we have made up. They hit the food tent when they finished. They got their recovery food box, and then they would walk about 100 yards over to where we had the awards tent set up, and they could pick which award they wanted. And then we actually had over at our merch tent another 100 yards past that where they could claim their race shirt. I did that because I didn't want anybody congregating the day before when they got their bibs, but it wouldn't have been an issue. We could have easily handed their shirts out with their bibs when we handed them. We did not do an award ceremony. We just shipped everything out.
Yeah, it was similar. At Zion at Night, we didn't do an award ceremony or announce the placements the night of the event, again, because it was so spread out. We wouldn't know until after the last runner had come in, the placements. But at the finish line, we did have finisher awards. We had chocolate milk and banana and like a post-race food snack box. And that was distributed by one of our team members who was there. Again, it was such a slow trickle of people. It was never just like people constantly crossing the finish line, you know, they couldn't keep up. So each person that crossed, pretty much we were able to hand them their finisher award and kind of even ask them, do you want chocolate milk? And if they didn't, then they're fine. Or if they did, we grab it for them. And so there wasn't a lot of hands all over everything.
Were both of the courses loop courses? And is that something important moving forward, looking at other potential race courses?
Yeah, I mean, shuttles obviously are going to add a large level of difficulty to hosting an event during these times right now. And so, you know, Zion at Night was a loop course, and then of course Bryce was several different loops depending on which distance you did. But yeah, the start and finish line was all at the same place. You can always do some things too, like our Lake Powell race that we do in October. We allow people to either park at the start or the finish in the morning and take the shuttle either before or after the race. And so like doing some things like that, you can really kind of like limit the number of people on buses all at one time. But even still, it's going to be a challenge that you're going to have to overcome.
Everybody knows that anytime you don't have to use shuttles, it's a plus. And even I think now more than ever, a loop is a home run.
And then this is a question that's relevant to passing and any potential out and back sections within a loop course. Did you give your participants any guidelines on how they should pass each other on the course?
We told everybody that if you're passing somebody, to just give them a heads up before you catch up to them, so that if they're concerned about it or if you're concerned about it, you can give them a wide berth as you're passing them, you know, and stuff.
And that's basic trail etiquette, you know. Try to just make your presence known, talk to each other, communicate. You can figure out fast. So I again, everyone right now feels like, especially everyone out there, is just happy to be there. It's everyone's pretty chill and trying to be considerate of others.
There's a question about insurance. Was there any additional insurance requirement that you had to add into your current insurance, or were the BLM and counties fine with your current event insurance policies?
No, our insurance policy is pretty good. So yeah, there was no additional need.
We didn't have to change our insurance, but the BLM did ask to see any language that we had in our waiver, anything like that, that maybe specifically addressed coronavirus. And so I shared that with them.
Did you make any updates to that waiver?
Yeah, we did. It wasn't so much to say, if you get coronavirus, it's not our fault. It wasn't anything like that. That's already inherently included in the waiver saying, you know, we're attending a public event and it's not the event's fault.
It was more to kind of explain our positioning on if we had to cancel events and things like that.
Yeah,
it was
more just letting people know.
They can make a decision and go in eyes wide open as to if it cancels, like what's their real risk.
Cancellation, and also letting people know that we might have to make operational changes to our event that we aren't at this time aware of, right? Like compliance 3 months from now is going to be very different than it is if we were holding the event today. And so we want runners to know, if you stay signed up, then you're going to be subject to those changes, including things like a rolling start. Like maybe 6 months ago when they signed up, it was 7 a.m. start time. And now we're going to say, actually, we're going to let people start at 6 a.m. and we're going to leave the start line open until 9 a.m., which isn't exactly what they signed up for, but that's what the change we'll have to make to be compliant. So that's more what our waiver says, is letting people know we're going to put on the best event we can. We might have to make some logistical changes to be compliant. And if you're not comfortable with that, you should back out now, because we're not going to give you a refund because you didn't like that you didn't get to start at 7 a.m. with everybody else. That kind of thing. That's more what the language suggests for us.
Can you guys share what's next in terms of your race calendar?
Yeah. So Lyle is in Idaho right now on his way to Montana to do some scouting. We made an announcement earlier this week that we were going to suspend Rushmore just this year. It'll be next year. But the rest of our calendar, we're anticipating we're going to be able to hold, just likely with modifications. We do expect to do another Zion at Night. We had lots of people comment like, oh, I'd love to come, but 3 weeks is too short a notice or whatever. So we're looking at trying to line that up for August. Lyle's up making sure that we can hold a Yellowstone. We talked to the Forest Service there using a Yellowstone course, and they were like, yeah, you can't do it at night. There's bears. And so we're going to do that one during the day, but same format. It'll just be during the day. And what's great about there is it doesn't get crazy hot. And then next year, we're planning on a normal schedule, but I don't know what's going to happen.
And then I guess just the final question is, I mean, I think these races were pretty unique and great experiences, but was it worth it? And what would you recommend to other race directors that don't really know how to get started?
In terms of, let me answer the question. It was worth it to us for a couple of reasons. I'm not anticipating that, the night races and like small group format is the future. I actually do think it'll probably make its way into our regular calendar. The response was very, very positive. But it was worth it purely just because we're doing something. Like, we're so used to working, it's taken a mental toll, I know, on me, and it was very nice being out and be able to do something. Purely from that perspective, it was good. We were able to make a little bit of money. So was it worth it? Yeah. I mean, so much so that we're going to do it again. But what advice I give, so when everything started going down, early April, I picked up a book that I'd read before that I'd recommend to anybody. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? It's a short book, typically used in like corporate settings, but it's really a metaphor to help figure out how to deal with change. And ultimately, you can take the attitude of, this is what I do. I know this, I'm not going to change. I'm just going to wait for everything. I'm going to be mad about it until it happens again, until I can do my normal races. Or you can kind of go, all right, things changed. All right, what's new? What's next? Let's try it. Let's figure it out. And I think that's it. I just think the formula's got to change. We've got to figure out some stuff. We've got to be okay with failing and trying stuff that doesn't work. But I think if you engage with your market, you talk to people, you try to get your lead from, do they want races? Do they not? And really try to listen to what their concerns are. I think there's still opportunity out there.
Think outside the box, trying to think of like ways that you can be creative and come up with something that people will want to do, because people are chomping at the bit to get out and do stuff right now. Like, they really are. They want to participate.
Yeah, we had a lot of people at Zion who'd never run with us before, but we're the only game in town, so they signed up. So if you can do it, if you're stable, if you can work with your permitting agencies, you've got a good relationship with them, I think it's worth trying stuff. And that's kind of been our attitude lately.
I just made this analogy up, so if it's a bad one, I apologize. But it just came to my mind, like, when you're learning another language, right, and you want to be like, how do I say this in this language? It's like, well, you don't say that. That's something you say in English. But like a similar expression or what you're trying to communicate, this is how they say it in that language. Right now, I think planning races kind of needs to be that way a little bit. Stop being like, well, this is how I do races. How do I do that in this new format or with these restrictions? And it's like, well, maybe you can't. Maybe you can't do it exactly how you used to. So think about how you can put on an event, or how you can put on something that runners are really going to enjoy, that maybe resembles or in spirit is the same as what we used to do, but for right now is just a little different, but still captures the spirit of it. So
yeah, Dane's right. That was a terrible analogy. No, I'm just kidding. That made sense. I got to do that. That was actually pretty good.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing your problem solving, creativity, ability to make things work in a weird market. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all for watching. Thank you to Salem, Lyle, and Dane for stopping by and sharing that information with us. Thank you to Allison for interviewing them. To keep up to date with more content like this, please subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Also, go to runsignup.blog and subscribe there. You can read a write-up on this Vacation Races talk. And again, if you're a race director looking to put on a race during this new time of social distancing, check out our guidelines document at runsignup.com/lookingforward.